Novel. Goodbye, Mr. Chips by James Hilton. And the chapter is 17. So, let's start. He sat in his front parlor at Mrs. Wickett's on a November afternoon in 33. It was cold and foggy, and he dare not go out. He had not felt too well since Armistice Day. He fancied he might have caught a slight chill during the chapel service. Marivalli had been that morning for his usual fortnightly chat. Everything all right? Feeling hearty? That's the style. Keep indoors this weather, there's a lot of flu about. Wish I could have your life for a day or two. His life, and what a life it had been. The whole pageant of it swung before him as he sat by the fire that afternoon. The things he had done and seen: Cambridge in the 60s, Great Gable on an August morning, Brookfield at all times and seasons throughout the years. And, for that matter, the things he had not done, and would never do now that he had left them too late. He had never traveled by air, for instance, and he had never been to a talkie show. So that he was both more and less experienced than the youngest new boy at the school might well be, and that paradox of age and youth, was what the world called progress. Mrs. Wickett had gone out, visiting relatives in a neighborly village. She had left the tea things ready on the table, with bread and butter and extra cups laid out in case anybody called. On such a day, however, visitors were not very likely. With the fog thickening hourly outside, he would probably be alone. But no. About 3:45 a ring came, and Chips, answering the front door himself, which he oughtn't to have done, encountered a rather small boy wearing a Brookfield cap and an expression of anxious timidity. "Please, sir," he began, "does Mr. Chips live here?" You'd better come inside," Chips answered. "And in his room." A moment later he added, "I am, the person you want. Now what can I, do for you?" "I was told you wanted me, sir." Chips smiled. An old joke, an old leg pull, and he, of all people, having made so many old jokes in his time, ought not to complain. And it amused him to cap their joke, as it were, with one of his own, to let them see that he could keep his end up, even yet. So he said, with eyes twinkling, "Quite right, my boy. Boy. I wanted you to take tea with me. Will you, sit down by the fire?" I don't think I have seen your face before." "How is that?" "I've only just come out of the sanatorium, sir. I've been there since the beginning of term with measles." "Ah, that accounts for it." Chips began his usual ritualistic blending of tea from the different caddies. Luckily there was half a walnut cake with pink icing in the cupboard. He found out that the boy's name was Linford, that he lived in Shropshire, and that he was the first of his family at Brookfield. "You know, Linford, you'll like Brookfield when you get used to it. It's not half such an awful place as you imagine." "You're a bit afraid of it, yes, eh?" "So was I, my dear boy, at first. But that was, a long time ago. 63 years ago, to be precise. When I, first went into Big Hall and, I saw all those boys, I tell you, I was quite scared. Indeed, I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life. Not even when, the Germans bombed us during the war. But, it didn't last long, the scared feeling, I mean. I soon made myself, at home." "Were there a lot of other new boys that term, sir?" asked Linford shyly. "Eh? But God bless my soul, I wasn't a boy at all. I was a young man of 22. And the next time you see a young man, a new master, taking his first prep in Big Hall, just think what it feels like." "But if you were 22 then, sir?" "Yes?" "Eh? You must be very old now, sir. Chips laughed quietly and steadily to himself. It was a good joke. Well, I'm certainly, no chicken. He laughed quietly to himself for a long time. Then he talked of other matters, of Shropshire, of schools and school life in general, of the news in that day's papers. You're growing up into, a very cross sort of world, Linford. Maybe it will have got over some of its, crossness, by the time you're ready for it. Let's hope so, at any rate. Well. And with a glance at the clock he delivered himself of his old familiar formula. I'm, sorry, you can't stay. At the front door he shook hands. Goodbye, my boy. And the answer came, in a shrill treble, Goodbye, Mr. Chips. Chips sat by the fire again, with those words echoing along the corridors of his mind. Goodbye, Mr. Chips. An old leg pull, to make new boys think that his name was really Chips. The joke was almost traditional. He did not mind. Goodbye, Mr. Chips. He remembered that on the eve of his wedding day Kathy had used that same phrase, mocking him gently for the seriousness he had had in those days. He thought, nobody would call me serious today, that's very certain. Suddenly the tears began to roll down his cheeks. An old man's failing, silly, perhaps, but he couldn't help it. He felt very tired. Talking to Linford like that had quite exhausted him. But he was glad he had met Linford. Nice boy. Would do well. Over the fog-laden air came the bell for call-over, tremulous and muffled. Chips looked at the window, graying into twilight. It was time to light up. But as soon as he began to move he felt that he couldn't, he was too tired, and, anyhow, it didn't matter. He leaned back in his chair. No chicken and, well, that was true enough. And it had been amusing about Linford. A neat score off the jokers who had sent the boy over. Goodbye, Mr. Chips. Odd, though, that he should have said it just like that. Hey guys, this the 17th chapter of the novel, Goodbye Mr. Chips. For more chapters, like, share, and subscribe our YouTube channel, Seekin 2.0. Share your opinion in the comments section and see you soon. Bye, Allah Hafiz.